We have covered in this series the very, very simple template of a purchase price, down payment, balance on a promissory note, subject property as collateral, as simple as it gets. But let's change the equation of this acquisition in a couple significant ways. First of all, let's say that this $100,000 property, let's say that the owner of this property owes $30,000 against it. Well, see, all of a sudden our 10% down isn't going to cut it, is it? Because there's just not enough down coming to clear the debt on the property. They owe $30,000. Let's also throw into the equation that this property needs $10,000 of solid work and remodeling to get it to where we can either rent it or sell it, okay? And so our cash needs, our minimum cash needs on this property are $30,000 to cash out the underlying, $10,000 to do the remodel. We need $40,000 to get in the game with this property, all right? The seller, this property is worth $100,000. They owe $30,000. The seller has $70,000 of equity. And let's just say that they need some money at closing just to pay some basic bills and do some things. These are the puzzle pieces of the equation. With this, let me propose the following template. Purchase price is $100,000. The down payment is $40,000 from the proceeds of a new first position loan not to exceed $50,000. Let's start there. I'm going to go borrow $50,000 secured by a first position loan. Out of that 50, I'm going to give the seller $40,000, of which 30 of that goes to pay off what they owe, 10 goes in their pocket at closing. They've received $40,000 of the 50 that I've borrowed by a first position loan. They've received $40,000 down. I come out of closing with the remaining 10 to rehab the property. I've borrowed everything I need to give to the sellers, enough to cash out what they owe, enough to give them the cash that they need, and I've also borrowed what I need to remodel the property, all from a new first position loan. I'm borrowing 50, I'm delivering 40, I'm keeping 10. Now, on a $100,000 purchase price, I've delivered $40,000 to the seller in down. The balance of $60,000 is in the form of a promissory note collateralized by a second deed of trust on the subject property. So what I would end up doing at closing is I would owe $50,000 on the first, 40 of which I've given away to the seller to cash out what they owe and to give them 10 to work with. I've kept 10 of that 50 to remodel the property. And then I have a $60,000 note secured by a second due the seller on the property. My total encumbrance is $110,000. I've got 10 in my pocket to remodel it. Now, let's walk around this and see what's happening here. First of all, does the seller get what they need at closing? I want you to think of their equity of $70,000 is their equity in the property. Remember, they owe 30. Their equity of 70,000, they're getting 10 of that in cash at closing and 60,000 on a note. And that 60,000 on a note is going to have an interest rate, a payment. It's going to have a cash out date. Now, if I'm going to remodel this property and resell it, I could write that $60,000 note with a relatively short cash out date, meaning on or before 2 years, something like that. Give myself plenty of time to remodel it and sell it. on or before 2 years, right? If I'm going to keep that property long term, I may want to write that note longer. Now, let's say I don't want to keep the property long term, but the terms of that $60,000 note are such that I wouldn't want to cash it out. Well, in that cause, I would want to make sure I have a substitution of security clause to move the collateral to a different property upon the resale of this particular property. I want to have you look at this from a leverage standpoint. First of all, how much of my own money have I put into this deal? The answer would be none, right? I've created a template that allows me to borrow everything I need down, and that down payment was a function of the cash the seller needed plus cashing out what they owe on the property. Then I've added to that amount that I borrowed what I need to rehab it. But all of that was borrowed, none of my own money. I've also created a first position slot on the subject property to serve as collateral for that $50,000 that I'm borrowing. So because I've given any lender such a prime time first position low loan to value slot, I'm not going to have to go to the world of hard money, 12 points, 12%, 2 points, etc. to borrow that. I can put somebody in that first position slot for 6 or 7%, right? That's happy to give that money because they're collateralized in first position for $50,000 on a property I've just paid $100 for. The seller is getting all cash in 2 installments, 10 up front, $60,000 in a note. Now, that note could be written that it's cashed out in relatively short order. I've even written that second note where there's no interest on that second note because they're going to be getting it within a year or less based on the resale of this property, right? The template allows you to go out there and hunt for properties whereby people who owe 50% of the value of the property or less become sort of the focus of your acquisition efforts. I want to make sure they owe 50% or less. I want to make sure that the remodeling is reasonable, because what I'm trying to do is from the proceeds of a new first position loan, I don't want to exceed about 60 or 65% of the total value of the property in a new first position loan. This gives me a favorable new first position lien slot for new money to come in, give me what I need to put down, give the sellers some money, give me the rehab money I need from a new first position loan, and the seller's in second behind that, okay? Again, this template is a template that can be used and rinsed and repeated. It's a template that when you look at a property and someone says, I want all cash for this property, you can simply reply, I'd like to give you all cash, but in 2 installments. Would that work for you? And now they're listening. And you can then explain that I'm going to give you this much cash at closing and this much cash in a short period of time on the resale. Let me tell you, this template can go a long ways. As always, if you have any questions on how this works, once you've studied the material, be sure you run me down and let's go through it.